Hello, I'm Smriti, and today we are going to read chapter 2 of The Little Prince. Thus I lived alone, with no one I could really talk to, until I had an accident in the Sahara Desert 6 years ago. Something broke down in my engine, and since there was neither a mechanic nor a passenger with me, I prepared myself for a difficult but what I hoped would be a successful repair. It was a matter of life or death for me. I had scarcely enough drinking water for a week. On the first night, I fell asleep on the sand, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was far more isolated than a shipwrecked sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So you can imagine my surprise at sunrise when an odd little voice woke me up. It said, "Please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep? I jumped up, completely thunderstruck. I rubbed my eyes, blinked hard, and looked carefully around me, and I discovered an extraordinary little boy watching me gravely. Here is the best portrait I was able to draw of him later. But of course, my drawing is not half as charming as its model. It is not my fault. I had been discouraged by grown ups in my career as a painter when I was 6 years old, and I had not learned to draw anything with the exception of boas from the outside and boas from the inside. I therefore stared in total astonishment at this sudden apparition. Do not forget that I was 1,000 miles away from any inhabited region. But my little chap did not seem to be either lost or dead tired, or dying of hunger, thirst, or fear. He did not look like a child lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any inhabited region. When I finally managed to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" Whereupon he repeated softly and gravely, "Please draw me a sheep." When a mystery is too overpowering, one dare not disobey. Absurd as it seemed to me, 1,000 miles from any human habitation and in danger of death, I took a sheet of paper and my fountain pen out of my pocket. But I suddenly remembered that my studies had been concentrated on geography, history, arithmetic, and grammar, so I told the little chap, a little crossly, that I did not know how to draw. He replied, "That doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." Since I had never drawn a sheep, I drew for him one of the two pictures I had drawn before, that of the boa constrictor from the outside, and I was astounded to hear the little fellow saying, "No, no, I don't want an elephant inside a boa. A boa constrictor is a very dangerous creature, and an elephant is very cumbersome. Everything is very small where I live. I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So I drew. So this is the sheep. He looked at it carefully and said, "No, that one is already very sick. Draw me another one." And I drew. This is the second sheep. My little friend said gently and indulgently, "Don't you see that it is not a sheep? It is a ram. It has horns." Once again I made another drawing, but it was rejected too, like the previous one. "This one is too old. I want a sheep that will live for a long time." My patience had run out by then, as I was in a hurry to start dismantling my engine as soon as possible, so I scribbled this drawing and I explained, "That is only the box. The sheep you asked for is inside." So he drew a box and he said, "The sheep is inside the box which you want." But I was very surprised to see the face of my young judge lighting up. That is exactly the way I wanted it. "Do you think the sheep will need a lot of grass?" "Why?" "Because where I live everything is so small." "There should be enough grass for him. I have given you a very small sheep." He bent his head over the drawing. "Not so small that... Look, he has gone to sleep." And that is how I met the little prince. So this is the chapter 2. This chapter is really refreshing and cute because we are introduced to the little prince, and it is beautifully written, and the whole chapter is very magical, and it generates curiosity in a reader as well as a listener also to read the next part of this book. And this chapter reminds us of the movies and serials where the hero is met with a very dangerous accident and he ends up in a desert and there is no one to help him. So as the narrator in the book was met with the very dangerous accident and he had no one around him, and in the desert also he had very little water, and no mechanic, no passenger, and no human habitation was around him. And suddenly when next day he wakes up, the very first thing he sees is a little boy standing in front of him, which was nearly impossible, because in a desert where there is no human habitation around, there is no one to help, how can a little boy appear there? And the little boy did not look like someone who is afraid or who is also lost in the desert, or is like someone who belongs to that particular place, because when the narrator asks him what he's doing here, he did not answer that particular question. He just the only thing the little boy asked and told was to draw a sheep. So the very first thing that he said was, please draw me a sheep. And later also, so this was very surprising to the narrator, but there is one line: when a mystery is too overpowering, one dare not disobey. So he's not going to disobey anything what the little boy is doing, and he draws these 3-4 sheep, one with a bindi, we can say, one with horns, one very sick and old, and at the last he draws a box. So this whole chapter takes us, it reminds us of the chapter 1, and we can connect it to the narrator's childhood, where he used to draw boa constrictors. And in this particular chapter also, the first thing he was going to draw was a boa constrictor, and the little boy mentions that, no, please don't draw boa constrictor. So no one ever had guessed it earlier. Every grown up had told to the narrator that his drawing number 1 was a hat or something, but no one ever noticed, or no one ever thought of it as a boa constrictor. So here the little prince, the little boy, is asking him to not draw a boa constrictor, because for him it's very dangerous animal who just swallows the elephant who is very cumbersome is the word which we read today. Cumbersome means very large and heavy. And later when he draws this box and he says that there's a sheep inside, the little boy also agrees with him. This whole story in this chapter 2 and how things are happening looks very magical in some sense, that I myself think of it as the narrator's own childhood coming back to help him, or maybe some supernatural power that has appeared there to help him, which is very strong, very pure, very innocent as a child, and very human-like, because all the grown-ups are just corrupted, trapped, they are bounded to just politics, grammar, arithmetic. They have shut their minds, they do not let their minds create or imagine things. But the little the children, they are not like this. They draw, they create, they think differently, and the narrator is still like that, but he stopped because he was told to stop, told to not draw, and learn different things which all grown-ups were learning. But when he meets the little prince, it's like a new life for him. I would say that he survived the accident. That was also a new life, and meeting the little prince, it's also like a new life, like his childhood returning to him. And also him drawing this box is very it represents how he used to draw. It connects to the stories part where in the narrator's childhood, he would draw an elephant inside a boa constrictor. And let's look forward to reading the next chapter in the next video. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.